Welcome to our first presentation of the APEAL Method, Acoustic Performance Evaluation in Buildings through Listening. I'm Jack Harvey-Clark.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Romeo Pitone.
Together we're going to take you on a journey through the motivation, development and realisation of the APEAL Method. This presentation is best listened to through headphones because it includes binaural sounds. I'm going to start with the background so you understand where we're coming from. We're a firm of acoustic consultants. I established Apex Acoustics myself in 2006, and we've grown to become one of the largest independent consultancies with over 20 consultants. We work from 3 offices and work all over the UK. We frequently win awards for our work because we take a creative approach to what we do. We like to dig deeper. And some of the motivation for what I'm talking about today has all been about trying to engage better with architects in the design team. How can we realise that? Because that's a major problem in acoustics. So acoustics is often described as a dark art by other people in the construction industry. It's full of technical descriptors and jargon which are inaccessible to many people. But the product of the acoustic design is accessible to most people, the soundscape. So why don't we communicate this with sound and context in the design? So one of our inspirations and motivations for creating the APEAL method was more than one architect declaring, "We want our building to sound like that." They were commenting on a video that we were playing that we'd made in The Word in South Shields, which is a public library that we did the acoustic design for several years ago. This has got a busy central atrium, but has much quieter spaces towards the periphery, all achieved in an open plan context. So have a listen to this video and see what you think about the dramatic change.
Welcome to The Word in South Shields. I'm going to take you on an audio tour through this building. Here's the cafe, the vibrant area, and there's people doing their own personal investigations, people having meetings, and there's gaming zone booths, and there's individual study booths here. They're on the first floor now, looking across the atrium towards the cafe. As you look around on this floor, you can see there's people engaged more in individual learning and discovery. So next to the entrance atrium that you can see there, you can see people pursuing their own learning and discovery individually. Some more tables in the open plan area. And let's move across to the area where the books are. This is where we notice the biggest change in acoustic environment as we walk from the open plan into the books. Here we go. Leaving the sound of the atrium behind, the whole responsive space changes in time. The people here are naturally being quiet because it's about 20 dB quieter than it is in the atrium as we walk across there.
So with the way that people reacted to that video, we began to realise the need and the opportunity for a method that could systematically demonstrate the acoustic performance of a building in use. There are currently very few acoustic methods for evaluating performance in use. Soundscape has got a lot of work to do. There's a global shift in the world of real estate from evaluating buildings against benchmark criteria towards evaluating performance in use. How well does it serve the functional, operational and well-being needs of the occupants? You can only evaluate that in use. Once we have an evaluation tool, we have the possibility for design aspirations. We have a communication tool so that design aspirations can be set and shared between the design team. So Rebecca is going to take you through the development process that we've gone through.
Thank you, Jack. I think it's interesting to briefly frame the method from an audiovisual standpoint. Film sound theorists have always put emphasis on the pivotal role that sound plays in conveying meaning within film. Amongst them, Michel Chion famously wrote, We never see the same thing when we also hear, and we don't hear the same thing when we see as well. And this idea is central to our method because we want to portray the soundscape providing as much context as possible. What is the source of this unfamiliar sound? Why is this area louder? Is it appropriate? As listeners, we can answer all these questions by watching a film. And this is what makes APEAL a fantastic tool for communication. One of the first buildings we have documented is Northumbria University Library. See what you think.
This is a quick walk through the floor space. As you enter the reading room, you see the collaborative areas with high tables and booths. Then there is the open plan areas with individual workstations. And towards the rear facade of the building, you see the quieter areas for deep focus work.
When it came to selecting our tools, we started considering what the most human-centered approach would be. We decided to utilize binaural technology as it captures the acoustic environment in a very accurate way, making you feel like you are in the room at the time of the recording. Using a point-of-view camera such as GoPro matches this strategy visually, so view and audition meet at the same point. This is also a relatively non-intrusive method and allows us to capture the soundscape from the building user's perspective. We can sit at a desk and still be able to film and record easily, whereas a dummy head, for example, would be more cumbersome, attract attention, and we would not have the same type of control over the footage. I'm now going to talk about some of the challenges that we've encountered so far. The first one has to do with realism when it comes to sound, and it has to do with our relationship with sound in film. As the audiovisual language has been developed over more than a century, we have become culturally accustomed to sounds that are not real. They're just symbols. For example, take the cinematic sound of a punch. Thanks to binaural technology, we're indeed presenting real sounds. However, the fact that they're real does not mean that we can accept them as such when we hear them in a film. For example, listen to this clip from Northumbria University Library. I'm sure you'll agree that the sound in this clip is very imposing, and you wouldn't believe that anyone could tolerate it. But that is the orally accurate rendition of the experience at the time in place. We have become tolerant of sounds in practice, desensitized to the overabundance of acoustic information, to use Schaeffer's words. Here's a short extract of some footage we shot outside. Have a listen. think what is disconcerting here is that the visual scene is relatively calm, but the sound is very loud. When shooting this, clearly I knew that the lorry was there, and I think I naturally disregarded it. I didn't realize the extent to which it dominated the soundscape at that moment. Watching the video, you can only think, oh, what is this noise? And so one of the questions is, how do we take this into account? The fact that we have ways of disregarding sounds when we are immersed in the soundscape, but not when we are rewatching or re-listening to the recording of a soundscape. Moving on to slightly more technical challenges. This has been a learning process because we couldn't find any references to previous attempts at doing this, particularly inside buildings. So the first recording technique that we tried was the sound walk. However, we quickly realized that this does not convey the building user's experience of the soundscape, because we don't not normally walk aimlessly in the office, do we? Usually we're sitting for long periods of time at a desk or other type of workstation, and we only move to and fro. So we took this into account and changed our techniques. Access has been difficult. As you can imagine, private companies have been very reluctant to let us use the footage beyond our work with them. And public institutions often do not have a process for approving a request for this type of recording. Also, when it comes to GDPR, we can anonymize everyone who appears in the film, but this really impacts the quality of the footage. Just to conclude, there are many aspects of this method that require formal validation, such as how long do you need to spend on site, how do you select the scenes to present, how do you choose to juxtapose different scenes, etc. Ultimately, how do we make this method systematic and effective to convey different acoustic peculiarities? And so we would be delighted to work with other academic researchers to investigate these questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. So when we'd assembled a range of materials, we then presented various clips to architects, facilities managers, and end users to gauge their reactions. People found they were more tolerant of the acoustic environment of mixed-use spaces when they were listening to binaural reproductions rather than mono reproductions of the same sounds. Architects were also especially keen to have APEAL presentation of more traditional acoustic parameters like sound insulation and reverberation times in rooms, because this would help with meeting design aspirations. So where do we go from here? As well as extending the range of acoustic phenomenon that we want to record and reproduce. We're very keen to collaborate, as Rebecca mentioned, with people who would be interested to extend and validate the method. So far we've focused on binaural sound, but we wonder whether 3D sound, ambisonic sound, and 3D video would produce an even more immersive experience for viewers. So people could watch this on a VR headset, or if they're looking on a mobile phone or a computer, they would have some control. We know how important control is when we're interpreting our acoustic environment. So to conclude, could this be a new soundscape data collection tool? Well, it does need validation, but right now we can see that it demystifies acoustics. It enables engagement in a way in which we haven't been able to engage previously, both with architects and the client, the wider design team. So it's useful in practice right now. So you can watch and listen to more APEAL videos on our website at the address below. Please do get in touch if you're interested in developing this further with us. Thank you very much for listening.